Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. We are chugging right along with what is happening in Elba at the moment, and these stakes are certainly starting to ramp up now because something quite major happens in this chapter, and it's a nice little build up until Oda decides to just come out swinging. There is something that I we all knew was going to happen, but to happen so soon certainly makes things interesting. So I need to get talking about this chapter. So without further ado, chapter 1141. Older women. And the cover story continues with Yamato's pilgrimage, this time from Ulti's perspective on the dartboard that we'd seen last chapter. And it is page one, absolutely beaten up to an inch of his life on the floor. Swords and all manner of instruments have just caused such pain. So, bless them. Seem to be having a bit of a bad time with who's who in charge. But, nevertheless, we have Elbaf to discuss. So, last we had left off, there was the sort of scuffle type joking around play fight that Gabon wanted over this key, and he sort of messed around with Luffy a bit until he decided to drop the key and perform that like 8 strike attack with the axes that Zoro was able to kind of just about foresee was going to be a problem. And he destroyed part of the castle like tower, and he was like, okay. Zoro goes to try and jump in the fight. Luffy then goes gear 5, and Gabon just surrenders. Just, nope, I'm okay. I don't need to catch the smoke. So throws down a big move, but doesn't really want to tussle any further. So he leaves the key with Luffy because he's like, you had the key the whole time. It's on your side. Just, you can take it. But just so you know, when Elbaf is safe and you're ready to leave, come and see me again. So Gabon seems to have some indication or knowledge of what might transpire, and that hopefully Luffy and the rest are going to save Elbaf. But in the interim, he's like, I'm going to just dip for a bit, and then you just come find me. So that is a pretty interesting sort of stance to have. But we did see a like flashback where Shanks obviously then did come and speak to him about Luffy and stuff. So seemingly Shanks playing more of a role now in the future steps of Luffy's journey and who he's going to interact with. But the chapter ended with the Holy Knights, 2 new Holy Knights, being summoned. It was Saint Summer and St. Kirringham, and they have been brought in because Shamrock is actually being sent back to Marie-Joie, and they are trying to execute the plan of capturing the giant children. And we learned that the sort of demonic sort of summoning circle that they used is called the Abyss, and they can't just use that to transport the children. So in some way, shape or form, they are having to take these children captive and then move them through, maybe like on ships or something, is what I think Kirringham suggested. But nevertheless, we do not start there, but we actually come back to Nami, Road, and the 2 injured gods travelling back to the party on a mist ship, the Sval like ship they have. And Nami's just sort of berating Road that she was looking for treasure, not an ounce of diamond or gold, nothing was there. The only thing that they cared about was Loki, and Road is getting flustered, like, you can't say that out loud, you know, gotta be careful, people might listen. And there's that back and forth about treasure. And we jump over to Frankie and Ripley's conversation continuing, and we see, there is a broken, almost severed piece of branch, like a massive branch in like a further distance from the one Frankie's walking on. And Ripley's explaining, they make their houses on the tree branches. The tree is so big that the sun realm where they are, they can live up here. However, when something bad happens, in the case of a village called Havoc that used to reside on that branch over there many years ago, and what happened is it was struck by lightning, and the fire had spread and engulfed the town, and it was impossible at that point to put it out. And the only thing to do was to sever the branch. And it's a really interesting analogy that Oda, I think, is setting up here, because Ripley explains, he's like, look, the lesson here is that sometimes, if you don't cut off the source, then the damage will just continue. So I think that is going to lead down the road of something that maybe Luffy or someone has to deal with by, like, just cutting off the source. So seemingly an interesting interlude. Then we go into more jovial spirits. We come back to the festival, the engagements and celebrations, and Usopp is having a fantastic time. This man knows how to hold his drink, and he's enjoying himself, and he's introducing Nami now that she's returned to Elder Jarul, big beard man. And Nami asks, like, what type of, women does he prefer? And while he's thinking, sword and head, he's like, oh, I prefer my women older. So there's our title reference. And Usopp decides to, like, hit the sword, calling him a fool, certainly getting way too comfortable with Ja Rule, and everyone kind of freaks out. Hyrule grabs Usopp, and he's like, you don't touch that sword, Usopp, you don't know what's going to happen. And there's a reference that Dory makes, and he's like, that could be like Excalibur, who's going to pull it out. So we can see everyone's in good spirits. And there's a real focus on Usopp's time. And Nami and Jinbei have just a brief moment and kind of reflect that, this is Usopp's lifelong dream. He's always wanted to come here, and we can tell that he is enjoying himself. He's finally made it, and it really is a big thing. I just hope he gets a lot more in this arc, because with how Egghead went down, it was great. There was so much happening, so much got revealed, like Kuma's backstory and then like the elders and everything. Great. But I think the slight thing that was missed was Frankie and Vegapunk, because it was such a big thing for Frankie. All those years he spent in Vegapunk's like lab, all the time and plans and like sort of looking up to Vegapunk, finally meets the guy, and then the focus goes elsewhere. There was not even like some time for them to interact or bond in any way, because once it started, Egghead was done and we were out. Made sense with the stakes that were had, but Elbaf could be a long arc. We don't really know how long it's going to stretch, but we know in some capacity we've got Loki and now Holy Knights to deal with, so all hell's going to break loose very soon. I just hope Usopp is given his due and is really allowed to, come into his own in this arc. Because like Nami's saying here, this is his lifelong dream. We got the reunion, beautifully done with Robin. That's checked off now. We've got the war that is about to follow, Elbaf about to be sundered, Usopp has to do some very brave warrior of the sea stuff to, get the sort of attention and fulfillment that he's looking for. So, anyway, tangent aside, Sanji is looking round for Gerd. He's very attuned to women who are missing. And it turns out that, obviously, Gerd being the doctor, she is taking care of the injured guardsman that Road had brought back. And she's saying, the stab wounds or the weapons that were used are interesting. It looks to be on the smaller scale. So they were struck down by, like, smaller humans. Like, what is happening here? You need to break it down in detail for me, Road, because this just doesn't happen, like, all the time. And he's like, look, we came upon the door, it was destroyed from the inside, the guards were in that condition, we came back, type of thing. And Gerd just knows Road, and she's like, you're sweating a lot now. What happened? And while Road is like thinking about what to say, do I say about what Luffy's plan is and on where Zoro are now? Do I say about, this Shanks twin or someone that resembles the red hair who showed up? It might cause trouble. And while he's going through these motions, Gerd just walks away, grabs her axe, and just annihilates him again. And she's like, you are going to tell me what happened right now. And we don't hear Road explain it, but what we do find is when we jump over to the Underworld, Zoro and Luffy are back with the key, looking at Loki. But this time, he is covered in blood. All of the animals are just in, like, piles. There has been a sort of very different situation. And Luffy's like, why is everyone injured? Loki, what has happened? And Zoro's the one to be like, damn, like, this dude is huge, like, as big as Oars. Like, there's no way this dude is this big of a giant. So Loki's more on the scale of an ancient giant. And he's like, look at the amount of sea stone, like, chains that are being used here for this one dude. So obviously Luffy is now in, like, a panicked response mode of wanting to help Loki, because they didn't leave on a bad term. They're not, like, against each other at the moment. And he's like, look, he's injured, we need to get him help, I'm gonna get him out of these chains. And Zoro's like, look, you can't just jump to the first thing. Like, we don't know anything about this guy. Everyone has spoken unpleasantly about him, and all the rumours say he lies, manipulates. Like, how do we know for sure? Look how big this guy is. Like, we can't take a chance. And Luffy's like, it's not about that. I'm obliged to help him. I want to help him. So they talk about removing shackles, and Zoro says, hold up 1 second, and just drop kicks Loki in the face, just absolutely annihilates him. Zoro, like, catches some of the blood drops, and he's like, okay, no, it's real blood, doesn't seem to be faking it, seems like this is legit. And Loki, like, is still alive and unconscious, and he's like, who do you think you... And then he passes out. And he's like, oh, is he dead? And Zoro comes out with the coldest line, going, if he dies, then that is his fate. And Luffy's like, okay, too harsh, we need to help. So decision made by Zoro here is to say, right, we leave one chain on his leg, we leave one leg cuffed, and then we unbuckle the rest. And Luffy's all excited. He's like, amazing, let him regain consciousness, I'll go get Chopper. The library is far though, Luffy, like, maybe there's a doctor in the town closer to come and help. But Zoro begins to start unbuckling the braces or the chains with the key, and they talk about, getting him food as well. And Zoro's like, "There's food plentiful around here, And Luffy goes into that like argument state of, I'm not eating my friends here. These aren't to be eaten. They're not just animals in the mountains. We can go get more. But as Luffy goes to run off and fetch a doctor to help, a ship begins to fall from the sky. And it is indeed a mist ship that has lost its clouds. Seemingly the clouds are faded and the ship is just in free fall. So whether it's just there was like a time expenditure on this ship or something to do with coming into the underworld, but it is the whole of the new giant warrior pirates and Sanji on the ship falling down. Now, obviously, Sanji's there because he's exclaiming about Gerd, and he's kind of hidden there. But we're about to get the three trio and the new giant warrior pirates all crashing down in this emergency. And they seem to be in a panic, and they seem to be trying to avoid a disaster that is coming. And they're all sort of having their jeers about they're just going to die on the impact anyway. But Luffy inflates up to his big balloon and catches them. The ship bounces and ricochets off, and they take some damage. Like they've got like the cogs on the heads of where they've got bruises. They're like, look, these are just some scrapes. We didn't take a direct hit. We're all good. Straw Hat, we beg you, do not let Loki go free. Okay, we're sorry. We should have explained it better. He is a devious, wicked scoundrel who just manipulates others. We knew him since we were kids. We considered him a friend, and it was the same thing over and over again. He is a beast who will kill anyone, even those who are his friends, without any hesitation. He cannot be allowed to be set free. And in that moment, Zoro's like, it's too late. And we hear the chain snap. Hyrule looks over his shoulder and stood up in this incredible like manga panel. Loki, the accursed prince, stood to his height, and oh my god, does he tower over the giants. Like Luffy looks tiny in the panel, like he looks huge. He is still cuffed on his leg, mind you. I don't think it's gonna make a difference, but every other chain's gone. He's stood. He is pissed. And they all begin to freak out. There is a panic. And he grabs his hammer, the big hammer that was like resting behind him, because why would you leave him with a weapon? Of course, that makes sense. He grabs his hammer, and all he says is, "Get your hands off Ragnar." And that is where the chapter ends. So we've got a name drop of something called Ragnar, whether it is a person, whether it is the hammer itself, or something else, or someone he's referring to here. But he certainly looks like a giant possessed. And I cannot wait to see what this dude is about to accomplish while being shackled by one sea stone buckle. Because we've got all the new giant warrior pirates, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, the three monster trio strongest. It is going to be actually insane to see all of them try and go toe to toe, because Loki isn't going to hold back now. And we're about to see what this legendary devil fruit has in store. But it's hard, because is he just going to be able to shatter the chain that's attached to his foot? He's certainly regained some strength. He stood up immediately. So it's just going to be incredible to see. There's no break next week. So now we've got Loki, he's going to start running amok. The Holy Knights are going to steal children and try and take them hostage. Okay, well, certainly things are going to get interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of this chapter. I will see you guys next time. Bye.